I was a punk rock teenager. So, again, my name is David Owen Jones. I grew up here in Southern California. A couple of my friends who I grew up with are in the back over there. My parents met at Kansas University. They married. I was born while they were in graduate school at Indiana University. My dad got a teaching job at UCLA as a professor of folklore, which he did for 40 years, when I was 1 year old, and so we moved out here. I listened to folk music, country, blues, jazz, and rock and roll growing up. My favorite band was the Beatles. My prepubescence, I was obsessed with David Bowie. Those guys might remember that. And I had as many of his albums as I could find at West Side record stores, such as Rhino, The Odyssey, and Licorice Pizza. In 1979, as I started junior high, my attention switched to the music that was beginning to explode in a youth movement, new wave and punk rock. Maybe you guys remember that. You guys remember that stuff? I saw a T-shirt about it over there. I saw Devo perform on Saturday Night Live. I heard the B-52s, the Ramones, and Blondie on the radio. I read about ska and rock magazines, and I bought albums by the Specials and the Selector, Elvis Costello, and the Clash. There were a handful of kids at my junior high who felt the same way about the new music, and we also started dressing the part. We all looked up to fellow seventh grader Eric Dressen. He was a pro skater on the Tony Alva team, who was the first at our school to cut his hair short. He had really long hair. His hair was all the way down his back, and he just shaved it off. Very impressive. And he didn't get any shit from the older long-haired kids because they all knew what a badass skater he was, and they respected him for it. And they'd be on the bus like, Eric, come and sit next to me, man. You're cool. You know, we, on the other hand, got called the usual names: Devo, punk you know what, homophobic slur, and so on. A little different story. My introduction to the local punk scene came from my good friend George Murillo at junior high, who I would much later be in a band with called Carnage Asada that still plays to this day. I was listening to radio station KROQ after school and keeping up with the national and international punk and new wave records. But one day I noticed George had this thing. He had Black Flag written on his shoe, and he had the 4 bars, which was their logo, on his Converse. And I said, Georgie, how did you hear Black Flag? And he goes, Jones, you got to listen to Rodney on the Rock. So he explained to me that Rodney Bingenheimer, had a program on Sunday nights from 8 to midnight that played more of the local bands that I had only heard of or seen flyers for, but not actually heard. I tuned in that Sunday and had my life changed. I first heard a song called Black Haired Girl by the Alley Cats. I don't know if you know it, but it's terrific. I was like, wow, this is fantastic. It was followed by a song from X off their new album, Los Angeles. I like that one even more. Then I heard a song called Survive by the Bags, and I heard Alice Bags scream at the end of the final chorus, and it just like woke something in me. I was so moved by the commitment that I heard in it. It made me want to jump all the way into the local scene. From then on, I was listening to Rodney every weekend and taping all the songs I liked. I still have all of my Rodney tapes. But it's one thing to be a listener and to be passive, right? And just soaking things up, reading about it. But I really wanted to be a part of this scene because it was incredible. So the next thing was convincing my parents to let me go to punk shows. And that was not an easy feat. So I was 13 years old, and they refused to let me go to see the Dead Kennedys at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Dead Kennedys, Hollywood, no way. That's what they would always tell me. So I kept bugging them for months to let me go to a show. And finally they relented and they let me go see X, the Blasters, and the Gears, because the gig was close by at the Santa Monica Civic. So that was pretty amazing. My folks took me and my friends, and that was our very first live experience of punk rock on October 11th, 1980. That's going back a little bit. So fast forward a couple of years, and my friends and I had become kind of like veterans of hardcore punk. It's hard, seems a little overdoing it to say veterans, but whatever. We had a couple years under our belt. We were seasoned. We were going to a lot of gigs, right? As many as that we can get rides to between our parents or friends. So anyway, on March 12th, 1982, we bought tickets to see this incredible band called the Bad Brains. Maybe some of you have heard of them. If you haven't, just check out some Spotify and listen to the Bad Brains. They'll change you. It was, I believe, the Bad Brains' first show in Los Angeles, and I have a visual guide. I'm gonna pass it around. So this is a very famous flyer from the show, drawn by this punk artist named Sean Carey. She's amazing. So we got a ride. Cool, we got a ride. It was a friend of a friend, a friend of a family friend from the Valley who went to high school with Greg Graffin from Bad Religion, who also played that show. So we got to the show, and we were waiting in line outside. It was a punk show. There's I don't know how many of us, 100 people outside, but nothing was moving. Like nobody could get in, and we didn't know what was going on. Some of the punks at the front started getting extremely agitated. You can kind of imagine, right? Sometimes not the most patient people, punk rockers. So we saw this guy there who we knew was trouble because we had seen him at other gigs causing trouble. Anyway, he started pounding on the door trying to get in. And then he broke a bottle, and then there were more bottles flying. And then all this, total mayhem started going. We didn't know at the time that the reason that we couldn't get in was the fire marshal was inside of there, and they had oversold the show. So they were actually kicking people out while we were trying to get in. And we had tickets, we bought tickets, but we couldn't get in. It was oversold and overpacked, which is okay. We don't know what's happening. But the next thing we knew, the riot police came out on horseback. And they started spraying everybody with mace and swinging their batons, because that's what riot police do. So everyone scattered. And the guy that we saw that liked to cause trouble, we saw him holding his face. He was like screaming, "They sprayed my eyes!" It's kind of intense to see a guy like that, who was a pretty strong dude, just falling apart. Anyway, I don't know if you all know, like back in those days, the police riots, they called them punk riots, right? But they really were exacerbated by the police. That was sort of their MO. The LAPD under Daryl Gates really hated punks and kind of wanted to stamp us out. So this was not the only occurrence. This is one of many, many occurrences of police violence at punk rock shows in LA. But this is just one that I happened to be at the time and part of. So anyway, we kind of scattered everywhere, but our group found each other. We just kind of, oh, John's over there. Oh, that guy's over there. And we all got together and we went to Okie Dog. I don't know if you guys know about Okie Dog, but it's pretty classic in the punk lore. It's a cool place to hang out. It's cheap. You can get an Okie Dog. So we did that, and we just we kind of just hung out there, and there were a whole bunch of punks there. It was a real punk hangout. And we were all hoping for the chaos to die down so we could maybe like roll back over there and use our tickets that we bought. Maybe. So we drove back, we parked in the parking lot and scoped out the scene. There was still some riot squad lingering around the front, but we realized that the back door was unguarded. There were no security guards right there. So it was only a parking lot fence jump away to the door that was unguarded. So all my buddies, we all started scrambling over the fence. They all got over pretty quickly. But unfortunately, I was wearing a pair of steel-toed boots. That time, that was part of the punk rock fashion. It also had, a function to it because I hated getting my feet crushed in Converse in the slam pit. That was not what I wanted, to have my feet getting crunched. So I had these boots on, but they were lousy for climbing a fence. So here I am, like, climbing to the top. All my other guys got over. They ran into the door. And as I got to the very top of this fence, I saw these cops running towards me from across the street. And one of them had out his nightstick. And so he ran up to me, hit me in the solar plexus, sent me flying, and I was just in a state of shock. Before I could even register pain or anything else, they shouted, "You better get your ass back over that fence right now, or we're going to beat the shit out of you." So, needless to say, I jumped back over the fence much faster than I had on the way there. I ran off. I licked my wounds while my buddies had successfully snuck into the back door. I hung around the parking lot area for a little while, and eventually my friends emerged all aglow. They were so happy because they managed to see the incomparable Bad Brains play their encore, Pay to Come, and it was even better than the record. And Henry Rollins joined on stage to sing it with the Bad Brains. So, I kind of missed it. And I was feeling pretty blue about it. But guess what? 2 weeks later, there was another gig. So, 2 weeks later, I actually got to see the Bad Brains at Devonshire Downs. They played again with the Circle Jerks. That's a great bill. And I have to say, it was the best performance, live performance that I've ever seen to this day by any band, by any musician of any genre or any performer. It was life-changing. And when they played Pay to Come, the whole floor of Devonshire Downs, which is a giant, I don't know if you guys know it. It was part of CSUN campus, and they used to have rock shows there in the 60s. Jimi Hendrix played there and stuff like that. But it's a giant place. I don't know, holds maybe 2,000 people, something like that. And when they played the song, the place just erupted. And instead of like a circle pit, have you guys ever seen punk rock circle pit? It's like just a circle, right? But the whole place became like a giant pit. So it was like wall to wall, bodies were flying and bouncing off walls. I've never ever seen anything like that before. I don't think I'll see it again. It was like a human pinball machine. It was incredible. Anyway, that's my story. It's called Hardcore Tales, Installment 1. Thanks so much, Marina, for having me.